This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for Avoid the Maze. I really believe everyone is going to perk up when they hear today's talk, because we are talking about how does additive bias keep you stuck in overwhelm. And as Candace knows, I am definitely in overwhelm. And I recognize it in so many other people today. And I would have thought because of the pandemic, so many of us would have mellowed out, but it seems to be the opposite, or at least that's what I perceive. So give us some information here.
Well, and the reason I think a lot of people are feeling overwhelmed is we're approaching the holiday season, additional commitments and so on. And so the idea is that, we have a lot of cognitive biases, and this is one of them. And additive bias is the tendency to face challenges or problems by adding something else to your plate. It might be a new app. It might be, an exercise program. It may be, holiday commitments being more social or being less social and so on. And that might not necessarily be the approach that's good. We are inclined to kind of hoard our commitments and not give up some commitments. I don't know about you, but
yeah,
okay. And I feel like I'm failing if I don't do a commitment. And so the opposite of additive is subtraction bias, but it is, the ratio is, like 0 to like 10, 0 being the subtraction bias. So I happened to listen to a recording of somebody that I follow, and he raised the point, and then I did more exploration, and it was really uncanny how many things I had in my email and other resources that were basically saying the same thing. So thinking about additive bias, first we have to get a handle on, we're in denial in terms of what our commitments are. And we overestimate all the things we can do and underestimate how long it takes to do them. And then we're loath to let go of any of them. And then we reach out for another cure or whatever in order to do it. And with the commitments that we take on, we're taking them on one at a time. So we're not really aware of how we're piling on. I think hoarding is a good phrase for it, because, if you look back at all the things we've committed to, no normal human being, any human being could probably complete these things.
Right.
So with the holidays, you have commitments, right?
Right.
And on top of them and so on. So one of the people, Eric Barker, who I also follow, says, we have to be mindful of what's important, what's urgent, the Eisenhower quadrants, what's important, what's urgent, what's not important, what's not urgent concept, and what is neither. And then what we can do is we can take an inventory of all of our commitments, and I can't even count mine. I mean, they're kind of infinite. And this massive to-do list, and a to-do list isn't necessarily commitments, but we tend to have that sense that we have to get everything done, and it's never done. So we're constantly on the hamster wheel going around and round and round. So the focus is on doing more in less time, and that's the wrong instinct. We can't manufacture more time. It's going to be 24 hours. We're not going to be awake for 24 hours, I would hope. And what we need to do is shift our thinking to what are the key things that need to happen, the top 3 items, actually. And this gets into some of the Lean Six Sigma thinking that they use in factories, but they also use in knowledge work and in personal matters. And the idea is to pick each day 3 things, and only 3 things that have the top priority, the highest priority. So in your day, what might they be just today, for instance, besides talking to me, of course?
So I have an all-day job with my husband. And that really takes top priority today. And I really should complete putting up the shows from Tuesday. What today's Thursday, so it was Tuesday, which I didn't do yesterday. And then I do have some training I have to take that is for a weekend project that I have. So 3 things that I absolutely have to do.
Okay, and I know in the background you have some other personal family matters and so on that you have to attend to as well. So that's
Right.
going to be, I'm not going to, I hope this doesn't sound judgmental, kind of noise in the background, but
Oh, yeah.
you can do that in and around the other things. All right. And how much time do you think it's going to take to do the first thing?
So the work with Rich, like as soon as our podcast is over, we are planning on hitting the road. And we have it scheduled from approximately 8:30 to about 6 o'clock.
PM.
Yeah. Yes. PM.
All right. And let me ask you, when are you going to do the other 2 things?
So when I come home, I have to really flip it and do the training for the weekend because I got to make sure that that gets done.
And how long will that take?
I have about 2 hours worth of training.
Okay, so that'll take you up to 10 or 8 o'clock.
Yep. So if we get home at 6 and I do that training, we can forget
You
about
eat in the
eating.
meantime?
Pardon,
Do
eating?
you eat in the meantime?
Yeah. And then somewhere around 8 o'clock, post the shows. So the reality of it is,
how long does that take?
well, because I posted them all in the wrong place, it's probably going to take me over an hour. So if I work all straight through, I'd be working till 9 o'clock PM.
And is it realistic to say that you can work straight through without kind of?
No.
Okay. All right. And is it your desire to work from 8:30 because you were up earlier than this?
Right. Right.
I'm out of bed to 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock.
Say that again.
Is it your desire to work those hours?
Not really my desire, but something that I need to attempt to focus on and complete.
And of the 3, which is the most important and unavoidable, absolutely has to be done first?
The all-day project.
Okay. And then which one is second essential?
It's got to be the training.
And
then uploading the program. So.
And does that have to be done today?
No, it really doesn't have to. It's just like I try to have that on a schedule, and because I missed my schedule yesterday, I'm sort of forcing myself to add it in today.
Okay. And what toll does that take on you physically and emotionally?
Right now, I think all I want to do is climb back into bed and go to sleep and just have these things happen on their own, but it won't happen that way.
Yeah, as if, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but what if you just did the training, the work project with Rich and the training prep and didn't be uploading until tomorrow?
That would work. But in the back of my mind, I keep thinking, what all do I really have to do tomorrow? Will I be able to fit it in? And if I can't fit it in tomorrow, what about the next day? And my personality fills my days typically without thinking. I keep, adding, I have lots of additives every single day, even after planning what I want to accomplish.
Yeah, and I do the same thing. So I have a list of things I have to complete. And some of this, I've known before, I've relaxed it, and then I come back to it and so on. And then I add things. So when I have a to-do list, for the day, for instance, it might have 10 things on it. It normally has 30 things, but let's just pretend that it has 10 things on it. And then other things will come on to my attention. And then I'll say, oh, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And so the philosophy behind this additive subtractive approach to the challenges and productivity and effectiveness and so on, it comes under lots of different headings, is to pick if you have a backlog, like you feel you do, I'm making that
Sure.
conclusion, then the idea is to take one thing off and find another place. And in time, as you do this, you'll start to weed out the stuff that's not important or urgent. And you'll have a sense of fulfillment by getting at least 2 big things done.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
And then
I-
you have to celebrate getting it done, because otherwise we have 3 projects that aren't getting done, not to mention all the other stuff, the head trash we have about all the cajillion other things that might not be important. And I'm talking to myself, Karen. So I'm not just talking to you.
And actually the reality of it is, I don't typically, well, in my head, I sort of prioritize what I want to do for the day or the week. But I find myself getting hijacked as soon as I sit down at the computer. And let's say my first thing I wanted to do today is write my blog. I sit down at the computer and all of a sudden I see my email. I see other things going on that screen. And all of a sudden I start doing that, responding, reading, deleting, and I'm not writing my blog. Now, in the back of my mind, I keep saying, got to stop what you're doing and write the blog. But I see this sort of mess on my computer and I want to just clean it up, answer what I have to answer, and then not worry about it and then go write the blog. But the reality of it is, that's where I end up adding more things to my plate because, oh, I read that email. Oh, I got to do this. And so
it gets into the time that you needed for the thing that you said was most important. So now you're behind on 4 things, not just 3 things.
Exactly.
And so the whole idea about this concept is, how do we start to weed out some things? It doesn't mean we're not ever going to do them. We're just not going to do them that day. And then when we get the things that we're prioritizing, maybe leaving 1 slot empty and just planning for 2 big things. Because, all day, that's going to be a bit of a drain on your energy, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And so on. And then maybe post the recordings tomorrow or another day. I mean, if they're need to be posted, they need to be posted, but who says it has to be, except you, that it has to be on a particular day? You're a very hard taskmaster for yourself.
Exactly.
But in time, it'll pick up speed, kind of like a flywheel will pick up momentum and so on. If you just prioritize 3 things, they can't consume your whole day. The beauty of it would be if you could say, shut down complete. That comes from Cal Newport. And he says, you pre-declare when you're going to stop work so that you can protect your personal time and your rejuvenation time. And then work will, fill the time you make available to it. It's called Parkinson's law. And if you constrict the time, you can still get the work done. Now, that project where you have to work with Rich, that's dictated by someone else, but still it's a finite amount of time.
Right.
You can constrict, the pre-training prep and also the uploading. But this is where the subtraction actually is going to give you more momentum and traction, because you'll be able to complete 2 projects and feel successful. And it's very important to celebrate when you complete them, rather than continuing adding to the pile, where I call it the blinking cursor in my brain. That
Yep.
The technical term is an open loop, because our brain keeps track of those things, and it knows that you didn't get a conclusion on something. And then you'll have more energy and not have that sense of dread. And I'm going to say, I don't know this, I'm not a psychoanalyst or anything, but I'm having done it myself. Often I find myself getting caught in the spiral of checking email and doing these things because I have a general sense of anxiety about the other things. And
Yep.
It's kind of like a self-soothing thing, like I'm like calming myself down if I'm checking email, even though it agitates me even more, because it's, oh no, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. It's just, what do we do? I mean, think about our grandparents. They had none of this, right?
I think about, growing up, I didn't have any of this,
Yeah.
and, all I had was either, a teacher in school telling me I had assignments I had to get done,
Exactly.
or coming home and having my parents, telling us that we had chores to get done.
Right.
And, I keep trying to remind myself that, and it's something that you said earlier, I'm the one putting these deadlines on me. It's not a parent, it's not a teacher, it's not a manager above me. Okay. And who do I have to get angry with? Only myself, if I'm overwhelming myself. And
well, and you don't even have to get angry with yourself. You can just notice, oh, there I go again.
yeah,
Thing.
yeah.
That's how I am. It's like, oh, there I go again, signing up for another program. And it's just that restless tendency I've acquired just as a way to avoid anxiety.
Well, and the funny part is that yesterday I sent my husband down because I had a great idea for a project that I could do with my older brother. And I explained it to my husband. He looked at me and he said, "You don't want to do that." And I said, "Don't tell me what I want to do or don't do."
Now
And
I
he
really want
goes,
to do it.
yeah, he says, "Look you're going to become so overwhelmed with that. You're going to be so consumed with that all the things you said that you haven't done today,
Yeah.
when would those things get done?" And I sort of looked at him, was like, "No, I'm going to prove you wrong." And I came back to my computer and I started putting this idea together. And then when I looked at it afterwards, it was like, oh my God, I have to dedicate a computer to a printer. I have to make sure that there's ink in the printer all the time. I have to make sure that I have the right kind of paper, that, I have to keep, because it was about selling something. And it was like, now I have to keep track of orders and money, and then paying my brother. And I thought, you know what, Rich, you're absolutely right. This is not a good idea. But I was angry at first. Like, why did I even go to him? It's my idea. It's what I want to do. But I was grateful afterwards. It was like, yeah. So,
but it's a great instinct that he has. And the question I always like to ask when I'm coaching people and they're taking on this project or that project is, to what end? To what end am I doing this? How is it going to further, whatever the objective is, personally or professionally? And in a way, it's kind of echoing the 80-20 rule that, 20% of your activities can drive 80% of your results.
right.
Then 80% of your activities are only driving 20% of your results. And so looking at our projects, number one, we can do an inventory of all of our commitments and then start to look for things that we can postpone. That's a form of subtraction. or totally delete. That's a scary proposition for people who like to take on projects. And the other is to just be really aware of, if I'm taking this on, which goal or important thing in my life is it going to serve? I mean, we've talked about the wheel of life before, but
Right.
my health, is it my wealth, my relationships, and so on. And if it doesn't serve those, it may be a poor candidate. It's not going to make the cut on America's Got Talent or something.
Yep. Well, and the interesting part was I kept thinking, hey, this is a good way to make some extra money. This is a good way for me to help my brother make some extra money. But when I started adding up what that extra money was to make it worthwhile, I probably would have to give up everything else I'm doing, including.
And you're not inclined to do that.
No, because I can't make enough money with it. Okay. And so, I was so pleased that, even though, like I said, my husband's words at first angered me, it was like, well, don't tell me what to do and don't tell me it's not a good idea. But I went to him to find out what he really thought, and he told me. And then when I was able to dissect it, it was like, okay, yeah, you're really right. And, I'm not going to do it. And
yeah, and one of the other little tips is, so kudos for that, because I'm sure that was like a big, hard thing to say no to something.
right.
But what we can do is we can block out time for these projects on our, calendar, however you do it. I do it a certain way. And there might be some little crevices of time in between, and those could be small, tiny little tasks, like having to not check the email necessarily, but maybe make a call to some vendor, something like, I'm always having tech issues. I think that.
Yeah.
And so, making those kinds of calls and so on, but they're only if you truly have some free time. And you could also use it just for some little break and some rejuvenation. It doesn't have
Right.
doing things, but our society is do as if that's going to be effective. So the concept is to pre-plan. And I think that's pre-planning is, I have a friend whose boyfriend used to say he ate pre-prepared food. It's like, wait a minute, isn't prepared food pre? Pre-planning, I think, is in the same vein. But basically you have open slots and then you have closed slots. And open list and closed list is another phrase of it. So you have 3 a day: primary, urgent, important. Everything else goes on the closed list until you've completed something on the open list. You get a sense of fulfillment and accomplishment by getting those things closed. It's done. It's behind you. You don't have to do it again, rather than constantly dragging this kite tail of unfinished projects, all of them. So how does that color what we talked about earlier about your day?
Well, it's helping me realize that, number one, my first priority, like I said, is to do this all-day job. I think it is still doable to do one of the other tasks. And because I really need to do the training, the shows will just have to wait for either tomorrow or Saturday. And I'll have to look at my calendar and see where that best fits in on one of those 2 days.
And how do you feel about that, coming to that conclusion?
Well, again, I think I feel good about it right now because I'm the one who creates when those shows go up. Okay. None of my clients, including yourself, say, okay, within an hour, my podcast has to be up.
Hey, Karen, where's that podcast?
Yeah, exactly. I've only had one client who ever was like that, only one. And it took me forever to explain. It's a podcast. It's going to be heard over and over and over again. So whether I put it up today or tomorrow or the next day, you're going to get the same type of listeners no matter what. Now, if it has a timely message, that's different, but most of our podcasts don't. So, I've got to learn to not be so focused on, oh, this is what you said you wanted to do, and you're going to do it no matter what.
So focusing on the impact it's going to have overall towards your goals.
Right.
And, some of that may be long-term, some of it may be short-term. You can't avoid doing this project with Rich because it's for customer. And then making some of the other decisions and remembering the 80-20 rule. And the idea of, adding things, commitments, isn't necessarily going to be effective. Getting them done is going to be effective. It's going to eliminate some, they're one and done. And then now you have free time on your calendar to pull some of the next priority items up to the list, knock those out. And let's say you get it done earlier in the day than you anticipated. Well, you could opt to bring in another item from the list, but only no more than 3 a day, could be less.
Right.
And Dr. Candy says so.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. So we both have to help each other not to keep adding things to our plate.
Totally.
So we can, yeah,
we're idea people. We come up with these ideas. Oh, wouldn't it be cool to do this and that? And then you realize, oh yeah, that takes time. And there's a phrase in writing. It's I forget who said it, but it's kill your little darling. So all those ideas, those phrases, turns of phrases and so on in writing, when you're editing and trying to make something clear, you have to give up. You can't say all of it because it dilutes the impact. And it's
right.
with our time and our focus and our, the way that we're approaching problem solving. And the first instinct should be, what do I take off? Not what do I add?
Well, a great discussion, especially for this time of the year.
Yep.
As we go into the holidays, and so many of us add so many things to our plate, including the food that we shouldn't be eating. At least for me, that's true. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
All right. Have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.